I'm 52 years old, and I'm going to tell you a personal story about my involvement with the ACLU before I'll tell you what my beef is these days with the ACLU. As I said, I'm 52 years old, and I first heard of the American Civil Liberties Union from Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush in 1988 when he smeared Governor Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts for being a, quote, card-carrying member of the ACLU. And what was his beef about Dukakis being a member of the ACLU? Well, the ACLU were known to defend the civil liberties of politically unpopular movements and speech. Yes, the ACLU were always on the left, but they would take cases involving free speech on the far right. And they have defended the free speech of organizations, movements, and individuals that they find personally repugnant themselves. Even to the point of defending white nationalists' rights to free speech. Not what white nationalists want, but their objective support for First Amendment across the spectrum, including the rights of white nationalists. They have historically also staunchly defended the rights of far leftists in that regard, which is what you expect the ACLU to do. And for example, they defended Gary Johnson. I think his name Gary Johnson, not the libertarian guy for running for president, obviously, but a Maoist by the name of Gary Johnson. I think that was his name, Gary Johnson. And he burned the American flag at the Republican Convention in 1984 and was arrested, and he took the case to the Supreme Court, and in 1989 the Supreme Court recognized flag desecration as freedom of speech, and the Supreme Court were correct on that one. As I said recently, even when the ACLU defends the rights of radical racists, Jewish lawyer defended the neo-Nazis' right to free speech in Skokie, Illinois. Glenn Greenwald pointed out that ACLU and a lot of black pastors from the civil rights movements were pretty much in cooperation in allowing them to support the right of the Ku Klux Klan to march in public forums, because the way they saw it was that pointing out to their ignorance and everything, it will educate the population, and it will probably discourage people from joining groups like the Ku Klux Klan. The ACLU's been involved with protecting the civil liberties of suspected terrorists in regard to national security, taking on the Bush administration in regard to George W. Bush's administration in regard to enhanced interrogation and things like the Patriot Act. They were even conservative political icons like Bob Barr and Paul Weyrich, who detested the ACLU, were alarmed when 9/11 happened and the U.S. government adopted the Patriot Act, and they were so offended that they decided to join the only organization that would go and effectively challenge the U.S. government's BS in trying to enforce the Patriot Act that spies on all Americans. I have my reasons that the ACLU appeals to me. I am a staunch opponent of capital punishment, and the ACLU's been very diligent in the fight against the death penalty to make sure that the death penalty is abolished. The ACLU's been involved with trying to put a stop to police brutality, especially racially motivated police brutality has taken place over the years. The ACLU has basically won the admiration and won the hatred of people from across the political spectrum. And so they are a highly controversial organization. In recent years, especially during the Trump presidency, the ACLU seemed to have changed, and what was once a nonpartisan organization became highly partisan. Now, A quick history of the ACLU. The ACLU was founded in 1917 initially as the National Civil Liberties Bureau, and then it changed its name to the American Civil Liberties Union in 1920. The purpose of the ACLU, or the National Civil Liberties Bureau at the time, was to protect the free speech rights and the constitutional rights of conscientious objectors, pacifists, and critics against the Great War in Europe, World War I, where the Woodrow Wilson administration were actually went after and started prosecuting socialists, radical labor leaders from the IWW, Quakers, groups like that, Jehovah's Witnesses, you name it. People who were generally on the non-violent activist side and objected to war. And the ACLU, the National Civil Liberties Bureau, that's what they did. That was their purpose. And in 1920, they changed their name to the ACLU, and they defended over the years the Scottsboro trial of the 7 African Americans that were accused of raping a white woman in Scottsboro, Alabama, and it was a highly well-known case. And what happened was that none of these African American males raped the woman. What happened was the white woman was a prostitute, and she was trying to protect her ass, and she went and accused these African American men of raping her, so she would not get in trouble. And as I said, it's been proven that these gentlemen had nothing to do with raping this white woman. ACLUs also defended, the civil liberties of communists when communists had their civil liberties and their constitutional rights violated. The ACLU's been involved with the civil rights movement to work for racial equality for African Americans. The ACLU's been involved also with the right. With women's reproductive rights. They've been involved with issues dealing with LGBTQ equality. You name it. If there was a right that got expanded and an individual right that was recognized in the 20th century, you better believe it that the ACLU were very much involved. And the right wing absolutely despise this organization, have accused the ACLU of being founded by communists. Well, ACLU was founded not by communists. The ACLU, as far as a political party or partisan politics are concerned, it was founded by the Socialist Party of America. Members of the Socialist Party of America founded the ACLU. And Eugene Debs was one of the early members of the ACLU. For example, Norman Thomas, who was a successor to Eugene Debs running for the presidency of the United States, was the executive director of the ACLU for over 20 years, from the 1930s to the early 1950s. The ACLU were there to try to protest against the U.S. government's policy of internment against Japanese Americans in regard to the internment camps during World War II. So wherever there was a human rights that was being violated, the ACLU was there to put a stop to it. And I used to say that I love the ACLU so much. I used to be a member. I used to love the ACLU so much that I went to bed at night knowing that the ACLU is fighting for everybody's rights. And things have changed because from 1920 until the time Trump came along, the ACLU did not put an ideological litmus test when it comes to challenging every presidential administration that come along, because even when you had presidential administrations that the ACLU felt a little more at home with, they still found a civil liberties violation being done and challenged the U.S. government on it. And they were very principled for many years. What changed was Donald Trump. Donald Trump came in. They ended up suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. Now, don't get me wrong. Donald Trump is a good reason for the ACLU to be motivated and to challenge him, because Donald Trump was very much anti-civil liberties. So everything that the ACLU did to challenge Donald Trump when it comes to his oppositions to civil liberties were very justified. But what happened was the ACLU turned extremely partisan during this time, and they have taken a counterproductive road toward being woke. Ryan Grimm, Kim Iverson, and Robbie Soev from The Hill discussed this in the video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play what I would say is a relevant part of the clip, and I'm going to comment on it. So give me a moment here. Give me a couple of seconds, because I have to go and find the clip. I will discuss very shortly.
And in the end, our democracy is worse off for it. The ACLU now refuses to argue for things such as the religious freedom of evangelicals or even pro-life Catholics. They have stopped defending due process for accused rapists and the freedom of speech for anyone they deem to be too far right. Now, you might be morally against what these groups stand for or who these people are, but when rights are whittled away for some, they ultimately get whittled away for all. The ACLU of days past knew this. They understood that even the unpopular needed to have their rights respected, that being a truly free society means all people of all ways of life and thinking must be free from government censorship, blacklisting, coercion, and control. But now they seem to be falling into the same trap as Time's Up, an organization with good intentions that's desperately needed, that you can now count on only about half the time to do what is right. Now, Robbie, I know that you even wrote about the ACLU and how they've even they've stopped defending due process. Do you think that this organization, over 100 years this organization has existed. They have fought for people on both sides who were extremely unpopular, and now in the last really 2 decades, really since Trump more so, the organization has shifted. Do you think there's any getting it back, or do you even see another organization potentially coming in to take its place?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people who were affiliated with the ACLU during its more kind of robust free speech due process phase. Wendy Kaminer is one. She was a board member, and she's become something of a critic. The other aspect of this, it's not just that you talk about the donations they brought in as part of the rebranding to be this anti-Trump organization. It's also the employees. It's also the young attorneys who have joined the organization see it as an anti-Trump, anti-Republican.
Sorry about that.
Republican organization. I'm sure the staff members of the ACLU who have been around a long time would love to stick. Most of them would like to stick to its commitments, but you bring in these younger people, and this has been the story at a lot of
I don't know why it does that.
Organizations being kind of taken over by woke type stuff. I don't mean to use that pejoratively, but they want a different mission. They want a mission that is more partisan and that doesn't defend Nazis and of course we're on board with mask and vaccine mandates. That's the cool, popular thing to do if you're a very progressive person. So that's part of the story, is grappling with they're going to have complaints from employees if they pick dangerous fights, and that forces organizations to backpedal. And there's no easy or good solution to that. You'd have to recruit different people, but then that's going to make the people who work there mad. I think, yes, it might be the case that a different organization has to arise. The Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, which is an organization that's also been around for not nearly as long as the ACLU, but it's been around a while, has taken up so much legwork in defending college students' free speech and due process rights in the manner that the ACLU did until very recently. So issue by issue, other organizations need to pick pick up the slack.
Yeah, and Kim, I think you put your finger on something really important here. And as we become so polarized around partisan politics, the institutions are going to have to fight harder to live by their principles, or they're going to be pushed in the direction of whichever way they have a lean partisan-wise. So, ACLU has always been kind of nonpartisan, but it leaned to the left. And so, if it's going to be pushed, it's going to go all the way there. And if people don't fight to say no, like there's nobody else that can really do this. I mean, you could try to seed a new group, but it will instantly kind of take on the stigma of just being a right-wing Nazi defending group, and so then it loses the cachet of what the ACLU had. And so what I just don't quite understand is, of all of the different places that somebody could go to work, if you don't believe in the ACLU's mission, why go to work at the ACLU? Go work somewhere else where you can act out the values that you have, rather than going in there and changing the values of the ACLU. Because if that's what you decide to do, you better be damn sure that you're doing the right thing, because you're taking down an institution that, as you said, has existed for 100 years and can't very easily be recreated. So you better be right about what you're doing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see the demise of this organization go in this way. I mean, we really need them, especially in a time when we're talking about a lot of censorship. And it's like, where is the ACLU? This is the time that we would need them. But it's really unfortunate to see them go this way. But again, 400,000 donors to 1.84 million. Right. That's a huge difference.
Exactly. And it's not even about whether they're right, whether Nazis, it doesn't mean that they support Nazis because they defend the right to march. And it doesn't mean that you have to be opposed to a vaccine mandate, to want an organization out there who's going to make the legal and the ethical arguments on that side. Because, a society ought to have to grapple with those rather than just being able to steamroll them into place.
And don't try to tell us that vaccine mandates and mask mandates are enhancing civil liberties. Maybe they're necessary. Maybe it's a trade-off that has to be made. But it's certainly it's a trade-off that cuts against civil liberties. That's just ridiculous. Coming up, Team Rising is here to discuss all the latest developments coming out of Texas. Stick around.
Alrighty, let me get back here. Okay, I want to there we go. I'm back. This is why I love Kim Iverson. Because, Kim Iverson sees things from kind of a traditional left liberal perspective. The kind of liberalism that I would associate myself with. If we're going to play devil's advocate and say I'm a liberal, I'm actually a socialist, but but the thing about it is, she had valid concerns about the abandonment of the freedom of speech protections of the right, and thing about it is, she's correct about that. She doesn't like the right. I don't like the right. The right's toxic. They're toxic, but you go and you silence the right, you drive them more underground, and then their message becomes more taboo and sexy to others. And I am so confident as a leftist. That I do want them, the other side, to say what they have to say, because it is so fucking ridiculous what much of the far right has to say. And and I'm also with her about the forced mandates when it comes to vaccinations. I think that the people who are anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers and all of that, they're silly. They're sheep. They want to follow conspiracy theories and pretend they're smarter than everybody else, when I personally think they're all a bunch of dumbasses. But at the same time, I do not believe in forced vaccinations. I do not believe that should be, and the ACLU would be wrong to consider that as protecting the civil liberties in the broader sense. So I'm glad she brought this up in her commentary. Now, Robbie Soave, He talked about the issue of donations, talked about the issue of the younger and older generation clashing and things like that, and possible successor organizations, like the Foundation for individual rights, things of that nature, and other groups. And I don't want to see that happening because, the ACLU as an institution, it's been there for so long, and the ACLU changing their mission will confuse the hell out of a lot of people. There's a lot of public relations dilemma that the ACLU already has, because it's been so deeply misunderstood, and this is going to play into the right wing narrative, those that has the irrational hatred of the ACLU. And even with the ACLU going in a negative direction, it's going to affect the ACLU's mission as far as the current positive shit, which is the majority of the things that they support. It will affect their work on what I consider the positive aspect of the ACLU, even now, as I am kind of criticizing them. Now, Ryan Grimm, and I hate to say it, but I agree with Ryan Grimm, and I'm not particularly a big fan of Ryan Grimm. I think he's really a corporate Democrat pretending to be a Bernie bro, or I would say that I would actually classify him, myself being a dirtbag leftist. I would sort of define Ryan Grimm as the most right-leaning of the boutique left. I think he's to the right of the Young Turks, for example. But thing about it is that he is correct to criticize what's been problematic about the ACLU, and that the ACLU better make sure what they're doing, because otherwise there could be perilous consequences for what the ACLU's for what they have done and all of that lately. So I'm just kind of saddened to see what's happened, because I believed in the ACLU for so many years. I have believed in it so long. I mean, it's a part of who I am as a leftist. It was one of the first leftist organizations I joined. And I know I said it was nonpartisan. It is nonpartisan, but it's very much a left-wing organization. Not everybody in the ACLU are leftists. There are libertarians in the organizations, and you may even find the odd conservative here and there. But it is. But most people are partisan liberal Democrats. You have socialists like myself. And even though people have smeared it as a communist front organization, it isn't that. But there are even communists in the ACLU. I will admit that. And even those communists that have been in the ACLU for many years, these communists have a weird facet of their ideology that they have always sided with the First Amendment. Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, historically, you don't know about her. Read up on her. She was a First Amendment absolutist, and she was a communist. She was a communist with the IWW back in the 1920s and 30s, but she was also a free speech absolutist as well. So the point I'm trying to make is I am saddened to see the ACLU evolving into what it's evolving into, and how fucked up it is that Donald Trump was so toxic that even a great organization like the ACLU has fallen into the make resistance mindset. Stop it, ACLU. Stop it. Go back to what you were known for, what I love you for all these years. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree, well, comment anyway. We will have a conversation. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are the muckrakers of our time. Feel free to share the content on this channel, and also hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and remember, this is the place to get hard-hitting commentary by yours truly. I am American Social Democracy. Peace, class struggle, and hope that the ACLU return to the level of common sense it had traditionally in the past.